Steve Rogers has faced God, but Doom didn't challenge him with power. He challenged him with time. Because Doom was one of Marvel's earliest time travel villains, and he learned something heroes never learn fast enough. You don't beat Captain America by killing him. You beat him by rewriting why people believe in him. And Doom only needs one moment in Steve's past, just one. Then it's over. So if Doom is coming for Steve Rogers, don't picture a battle. Picture a surgery. Because Doom doesn't want Captain America defeated. He wants Captain America redefined. He wants the world to wake up one day and realize the shield doesn't mean safety anymore. It means a lie they outgrew. And that's what makes this terrifying. Steve has survived aliens, monsters, gods, and armies because those threats were honest. You could see them. You could fight them. But time isn't a villain you can punch. If Doom finds the exact second that turns Steve into a symbol, he doesn't need to kill him. He only needs to poison the meaning behind him. So every speech feels weaker. Every victory feels borrowed. And every person who once believed starts hesitating. In this video, we're breaking down how Doom's time travel history proves he can do it, why Steve is the perfect target, and what one moment Doom would choose to snap the entire Captain America legacy in half. Now, I want you to comment one thing before we begin. If Doom could change one moment in Steve's past, what should it be? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Because the moment you say it out loud, you'll realize something chilling. Some moments don't just create heroes, they create the entire future. Let's get into it. Most villains attack your body because that's the easiest kind of victory to understand. Break the hero's ribs, knock them out, destroy their base, and the story looks finished. Doom doesn't think like that. Doom looks at your entire life like it's a chessboard, and he wants to win before the first punch is even thrown. He doesn't just want to defeat Steve Rogers in a battle, he wants to infect the story of Steve Rogers so deeply that even when Steve wins, he still loses something permanent. That's why Doom attacks timelines. If you can rewrite the moment a hero becomes a hero, you don't just damage their body, you damage their meaning. Marvel has shown this obsession for decades. One of Doom's earliest iconic time schemes goes back to Fantastic Four, 1961, number 5, where he kidnaps Sue Storm and forces the Fantastic Four to use his time machine for his own gain, turning time travel into a weapon before it was even a mainstream Marvel concept. This isn't a modern twist, this is Doom's original blueprint. He learned early that history is more fragile than armor. The past is softer than steel. And that's why when Doom comes after Steve Rogers, he wouldn't start by trying to overpower him physically. Doom would go for something more terrifying than death. He would go for Steve's identity. Because once a hero starts questioning who they are and what they stand for, every victory becomes heavier, slower, and easier to break. Doom respects strength when it serves domination. He respects power when it forces obedience. He respects intelligence because it creates leverage. Steve Rogers doesn't impress Doom in those categories the way Tony Stark or Reed Richards might. Steve is not the smartest man in the room. He is not the richest. He doesn't rule a country. He doesn't intimidate people with technology or strategy alone. And that's exactly why Doom hates him. Steve represents something that Doom cannot control with fear. Steve is a symbol that proves leadership doesn't have to come from superiority. It can come from trust. Doom rules Latveria through control, discipline, and the quiet threat that resistance is pointless. Steve leads through sacrifice and consistency. People follow him not because they're forced, but because they choose to. And to Doom, that is the most dangerous kind of power in the world. Because if people can follow hope, they don't need a dictator. If people can stand together under a man like Steve, Doom's entire worldview collapses. Steve Rogers is living evidence that Doom's philosophy is wrong. Doom can crush armies, outsmart governments, and intimidate enemies, but Steve makes strangers brave. Steve turns civilians into believers. Doom doesn't fear Steve's shield. He fears what the shield represents. It's not a weapon, it's a promise. And Doom's deepest instinct is to break promises so completely that nobody believes in them again. Now, imagine the world sliding toward collapse. Not a normal invasion, not a simple war, but a multiverse-level crisis where reality itself starts tearing. Incursions, collisions, worlds bleeding into each other, heroes scrambling without clear rules or time to breathe. In that chaos, Doom doesn't panic. Doom calculates. And he realizes something that the Avengers often forget. Steve Rogers is not powerful because of what he can do alone. Steve is powerful because he can unify people who hate each other. He can make divided teams move like one organism. He can turn fear into discipline. In a reality-breaking event, that ability is more valuable than raw strength. That's why Doom's strategy isn't to defeat Steve in the present. Doom understands that the present is messy. Too many variables, too many witnesses, too many chances for the hero to adapt. The past is cleaner, the past is softer. If Doom can poison Steve at the right point in his life, then the version of Steve who arrives in the future is already cracked. Not weak, not cowardly, but internally damaged. Easier to manipulate, easier to isolate. Doom doesn't want Steve dead because death turns Steve into a martyr. Doom wants Steve alive, but uncertain. Alive, but haunted. Alive, but carrying a secret wound that makes him hesitate when the world needs him most. That's why Doom time travels. Not to kill Captain America, to ruin him in a way no one can see until it's too late. Here's what makes Doom truly cruel. He doesn't pick random dates. He doesn't gamble. Doom studies people like they're machines, and he finds the exact moment the machine became unstoppable. For Steve Rogers, there is a day where the Captain America legend locks into place. The day where Steve stops being a man trying to prove himself and becomes the symbol the world refuses to let die. Doom would hunt that day like a predator. Because Doom knows something about heroes that most villains never understand. Heroes are not built from muscles. They're built from meaning. Their origin story is their spine. And if you can shatter the origin, you don't just break the hero, you break the symbol. Doom wouldn't need to massacre a city. He wouldn't need to murder someone important. Doom would do something far worse. He would corrupt the memory. He would make Steve feel like the moment he thought he earned his destiny was actually manipulated by someone smarter. Doom's goal would be psychological infection. He wants Steve to look back and realize that even his purest moments weren't fully his. That's why Doom doesn't need to kill anyone. He only needs Steve to feel one sentence sink into his bones. You were never in control. Because once that idea takes root, everything Steve does afterward becomes heavier. Every decision becomes slower. Every act of leadership carries doubt. Doom doesn't want Steve bleeding. Doom wants Steve questioning the foundation of his own legend. If this sounds too extreme, that's only because most people misunderstand Doom. Doom has never been a villain who settles for simple wins. He doesn't just want to steal something and escape. He wants to prove a philosophical point. He wants the world to recognize that Doom was right. And time travel has always been one of his favorite weapons because it turns the entire universe into a tool. Marvel showed this very early. In Fantastic Four, 1961, number 5, Doom doesn't just fight the team, he forces them into time travel as part of his scheme, turning the Fantastic Four into unwilling parts of his plan. That's a signature Doom move. He doesn't just attack you, he uses you, he traps you inside your own heroism. He creates situations where doing the right thing benefits him more than doing the wrong thing. That kind of manipulation is classic Victor Von Doom. So the idea of Doom traveling back not to kill Steve, but to sabotage the meaning of Captain America fits perfectly. Doom's cruelty has always been elegant. He doesn't smash glass, he cracks foundations, and when people later ask why the building collapsed, they blame the storm, not the man who weakened the structure years ago. Doom's greatest victories are the ones nobody notices until they're irreversible. That's why this kind of ruin the hero's perfect day plot isn't out of character. It's Doom at his most authentic, cold, strategic, surgical. Now Marvel has been quietly building Doom and Steve into something deeper than a random matchup. And when a story frames something as a first encounter, It isn't just trivia, it's a signal. It means this relationship matters. In Captain America 2025, Doom is positioned as Steve Rogers' first real encounter with Dr. Doom. And that's not a casual detail. That's Marvel planting a seed that says, this isn't just an Avengers-level threat, it's personal. Because Doom isn't a villain who only belongs to one hero. He's too big for that. But when Doom chooses to focus on someone, it becomes intimate. It becomes targeted. It becomes psychological warfare. That's why a Doomsday storyline bringing Doom's energy into Steve's life makes cinematic sense. Imagine it on screen. Steve thinks he's stepping into a mission, thinking the battlefield is the present. But Doom already fought that battle years ago in a timeline Steve doesn't remember. Doom has already touched Steve's history, already whispered poison into the roots. Steve just doesn't know it yet. That kind of reveal is terrifying because it steals a hero's agency. It tells Steve that even his cleanest victories might have been shaped by an enemy he never saw. Doom doesn't need Steve to remember the meeting. Doom needs Steve to feel the consequences. To Steve, Doom doesn't insult Steve like a thug. Doom speaks like a king delivering a sentence. He doesn't shout. He doesn't rage. He doesn't lose control. His calm is the weapon, because calm is what you show when you already believe the fight is finished. Doom would look at Steve with a kind of cold curiosity, like he's examining a statue people worship and deciding where to strike it. And he would say something brutal, not because it's loud, but because it's precise. You're not special. Not as an opinion, but as a diagnosis. Then the real Blade comes out. You're just a story people tell themselves because they're afraid. Doom would frame Steve as a coping mechanism, not a leader. A comforting myth, not a man. That's the attack. Doom wants to reduce Steve from reality to fiction. Because if Steve is only a story, then Doom can replace him with a stronger story. Doom can replace hope with order. Steve, being Steve, would react the only way he knows how. He would try to swing first. He would try to solve it physically. But Doom wouldn't flinch. Because Doom isn't here for Steve's shield. Doom isn't here to win a fistfight. Doom is here to break Steve's faith in what he represents. The moment Steve doubts his own meaning, Doom wins something larger than a battle. He wins the future. Here's the final horror of it. Doom isn't doing this for ego alone. Doom isn't traveling through time just to bully Steve because he can. Doom is setting the board for something enormous. A world where people stop running to Captain America when things collapse. A world where hope doesn't rally anyone anymore. A world where Steve's name still exists, but it doesn't inspire. Because the greatest way to defeat a symbol isn't to destroy it publicly. It's to make it irrelevant quietly. That's what Doomsday really means in Doom's mind. Not one big explosion that heroes can punch their way through. It's the slow death of belief. It's the gradual shift where people stop trusting heroes and start begging for control. Doom wants to create a future where his rule feels logical, even necessary. And Steve Rogers is the last major obstacle to that future because Steve represents the opposite idea, that humanity can survive through trust. So Doom's first move isn't war, it's erosion. It's ensuring that one day Steve Rogers wakes up and realizes the most terrifying truth imaginable. The timeline was never his, it was Doom's. And Steve has been walking through a battlefield that was designed before he even stepped onto the field. So if Doom time traveled just to touch Steve Rogers' past, that means he wasn't trying to win a fight. He was trying to win the future. Because when you attack Captain America head-on, you create a martyr. But when you attack the moment he became a symbol, you create doubt. And doubt spreads faster than fear. Steve can punch an enemy, he can outlast a war, he can survive anything you can see. But what happens when the enemy is a missing memory, a rewritten moment, a version of history that makes the shield feel weaker? That's what makes Doom terrifying. Not his armor, not his power, his patience. So comment one thing right now. Do you think Doom breaks Steve Rogers? Or does Steve break the timeline back? And subscribe, because the next video gets even darker. The exact moment Doom would choose to rewrite. And why the Avengers wouldn't even notice until it's too late. See you in the next one.